Welcome back to your hour. Ben Blankley joins us now. He's a school board member, District 1
District 1.
in USD 259, and he's also running for reelection. Um, so, what kinds of important issues do you feel are facing the school board at this time?
Well, so being a school board member in the United States has been real rough the past 18 months because of the pandemic.
Right.
And we've had to make a lot of really tough decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So, what we're looking forward is post pandemic, once we get out of this, what kind of supports students will need to recover any learning loss that they may have occurred during that time.
And there has been learning loss, hasn't there?
There has been. It typically, we don't have real solid data on demographics, but in general, the students that had learning losses during summers tended to have learning loss.
Right, because a lot of it was remote learning, and I think for a lot of people, the remote learning is difficult to pay attention to because you don't have the same stimuli that you have when you're in a classroom.
Yeah, I would agree. Remote learning now definitely worked for a subset of folks, but in general, after the last year, we kind of all figured out that in-person learning is what we need to achieve most of all. And so making sure that we can continue that in-person learning for as many learners as possible is on the forefront of pretty much every school board's mind.
I know my daughter had gotten laid off from her job, so she was home most of the time when her kids had to have the remote learning. And so she was able to kind of help facilitate that and make sure that they stayed on task and stayed with it. But who might be, whose parents might be working and they're home by themselves, I think that makes it a little more challenging to keep their attention on what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough in my employment at Spirit to have been working remotely up until late November of 2020. And so myself and my wife were home to help facilitate my child's remote learning experience. But then when I had to go back in person to work, is an entirely different environment.
Yeah.
And if both of us had had to go in person to work, then my child would have been one of those that went in person during the pandemic.
Yeah. So what other kinds of issues? I know that people, I haven't heard that many people complain about how the school board is spending money lately. So what kinds of issues are coming up that you think are going to cost?
So a couple of things come to mind. One is our transportation contract. We renegotiated that one. You see the yellow school buses all across town. It's pretty pricey to run those school buses every day.
I'll bet.
And right now, if your child's in a magnet school, you get transportation offered to you regardless of where you live in the district. And so a lot of our transportation budget is spent transporting children around to their magnet schools of choice, which is important to have those schools of choice within the public school system. But then also as leaders, as people are looking at this budget, we have to determine, is that the best use of a limited pool of funding? And so that's a question that we're going to be having to look at in the future years as, is this sustainable, this transportation system? And the other thing is it's always important to remember that most of the school district's budget is people. It's salaries and benefits for staff.
Sure.
And so when cuts to happen because of a loss in state funding or anything like that, that's people, that's Wichitans, that's jobs. And so we have to be really careful when we start looking at those things because it really does impact the local economy.
Well, sure. Well, and it also impacts classroom sizes and things like that, which, if you can keep classroom sizes at a decent size, then the students get more attention and get a better quality education. Whereas if you start raising the number of students per teacher, it gets kind of difficult.
Yeah, especially with the identified learning losses that we're anticipating we're going to see, because the best way of closing those gaps is one-on-one instruction with a trained staff member. And so to achieve that, right now we're using federal dollars from the Relief Act to add in tutoring service for learning losses.
Yeah. But those funds won't last forever.
That's true. Yes, we have to have an out plan, because that has to be sustainable, and it has to, because the federal funds are limited, and when they go away, then what do we do?
Right. So it's important that people vote.
It is very important. Local elections have notoriously low turnout, and in addition, they're also really close. So it could be decided with a couple dozen votes across the city.
So it's get out and vote. And like Cindy said, early voting starts today.
Yes, and
So-
and you will have all 4 USD 259 Board of Education seats on your ballot.
Okay, cool. Well, Ben, thanks for joining us today. It was a real pleasure having you here.
Thank you, Cheryl. Always a pleasure.
And good luck to you.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back with a little more Your Hour, so stay with us.